Hello, and welcome to the Let's Talk About podcast. The next 3 podcasts are a special series called Voices of Change, Breaking the Silence on Suicide. I'm taking a deep dive into stories of individuals whose lives have been profoundly impacted by suicide. Part 3, I speak with Ben Akers, who turned the devastating loss of his best friend Steve into action. Ben's grief motivated him to establish Talk Club, a mental health charity focused on men and suicide prevention. He'll share his philosophy behind Talk Club, the impact it's making, and how he hopes to encourage more men to open up on their mental health struggles. I also need to issue a trigger warning. These stories are honest and raw and, in some places, very difficult to listen to. So please be aware.
I'm a filmmaker who lost his mate basically, and now I'm the CEO of a charity I didn't mean to start. So Gav, my co-CEO, he's the therapist, so he's the sort of like the one that could probably knows more information about stuff, especially about those type of statistics and where those things go. But yeah, I mean, Talk Club started. We started 5 years ago. We officially launched in March 2019 at the launch of my film called Steve, which is a documentary about male mental health, sparked by the suicide of my childhood best friend. So me and Steve were sort of brothers by another mother, born 4 days apart. And we were best mates through secondary school into our 20s and 30s. But he got to a point when he was sort of in his late 30s where depression had taken hold too much. He took his own life, and it was quite hard for me because it was basically I was in Australia. I was living in Australia at the time. I'd been there for 6 years. He'd been in Canada, so he'd been there for 5 years. So even though we talked and stuff on sort of line or whatever, we hadn't got anywhere. I had no idea what state he was in, and the things of social media were telling me that he's having a great life out there. So it was quite a shock. I was back in the country. I've been back in the country 2 weeks here. I think he'd been back a month, and I get a phone call saying that he's taking his own life. So fast forward 3 years, me spending a lot of time in therapy trying to work out why. In that 3 years, there's sort of obviously lots of inquests, lots of sort of his funeral was very hard because I've only just returned, and then seeing all these people that I was hoping to catch up with, and I see them at Steve's funeral, and then like I'm sitting there, and literally I was sitting in a hammock in France reading a Sunday supplement that I'd picked up on the plane across before we jumped on the plane coming across, and I read these horrific statistics that sort of like statistically the thing most like I mean statistically now it's the biggest killer in men under 50, and statistically like 76% or 75% of suicides now are male. A man takes his life every 2 hours in the UK, and I'm reading these statistics. At that time it was 45, so it's gone up. It's sort of gone up in sort of it's starting to take on heart attacks now, and the horribleness of it all is like the thing most likely to kill me is me. So I was reading this thing and sort of like thinking very much that Steve wasn't a number. He was a person, a father, a son, a brother, and sort of my friend, and sort of feeling quite angry with this. And then I was reading in this thing as well that sort of like in another part of this magazine that men of my age watch sport and documentaries, and it was like a funny thing versus this sort of like horrific thing further forward. So I decided there and then I'm going to make a film about this, and And I'd already been dabbling with film before. I grew up in advertising, so I'd been sort of I used to write adverts for crap that people don't need. So I knew that sort of the power of persuasion was sort of like problem solving and design and creativity. So I just decided I was going to make this film. I told my wife, and my wife said, "No, you're not making that. I think that's the worst decision you could ever do." And I sort of said, "Like, I think I need to make it. Let's reframe it." And she goes, "Okay, well, if as long as you talk it over with your therapist and you sort of like you agree to sort of dial up the amount of support you're getting." So so that's what I did, and it was meant to be like a little 15-minute film to start with, just like looking at statistics and sort of like maybe just trying to get some maybe closure was the quickest way I got there. Some closure for me. But anyone that sort of as you said, anyone that's been anyone who's been affected by suicide knows that there's very little closure you can get on these things. So um and while I was making it, well, when I put this crowdfunder out, suddenly all these amazing people started coming to me with their stories. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a bit longer than 15 minutes. And and at the same time, my third child was born. So my wife, who was the producer on the film, took her eye off the ball and never let the creative never let the writer, the director, and be the producer as well, because you end up with 50 hours of footage. So yes, so for 6 to 8 months, I sort of made this film, and then put it all together, and it was sort of like, I mean, it was quite interesting because it wasn't. I wouldn't go as far as a labor of love because that sort of sounds like it was sort of or passion project. It was sort of something I needed to get out more than sort of like had this love for, I think. And then while we were making it, we were getting all these people, these amazing people, and I've realised that there was actually I could see a sort of gap in the market, if there is a market of mental health, and everyone was concentrating more on they were either pitching themselves against therapy or they were looking at what I call triage, trying to keep people alive, that phone call or keeping people off that bridge. Um, so I decided to sort of try and work out what if we pitched it. There was a bloke called Danny Sculthorpe, and he sort of said to me this idea of um, mental fitness. So I suddenly thought, well, okay, well, what about if we actually start looking at it as like we do with physical fitness? You go to the gym or you go running or whatever like that. What if you look at mental fitness in the same way? What if you look at this as a preventative way of looking at of getting mental ill health, the same way we do like I think the way that we look at mental health in this country is we wait for ourselves to have a heart attack before we go for a run. We wait for that broken moment before we actually start looking at why, especially in 2018, 2019. So yeah, so I sort of like finished this film, did a couple of pre-screenings just to make sure it wasn't complete crap, and people were sort of saying to me, "Now what? You've opened me up. Now what? Now what do I do?" So with five other members of the film, people who are in the film and people who supported the film and like Gav did the music for the film. I sort of we sort of pulled together this six of us, and we started Talk Club. And the idea was just to start one little talking group. That was the idea. Just maybe there was something online like that would start a Facebook group and start this one little talking group and see where we get to from there. And now 3 years as a charity, over I think we've trained over 700 men who are captains, the blokes who run the groups, and we've got 117 clubs around the country now. So it proves the need is there. Like I've got 6 staff, so with 6 of us, sort of like doing this thing. So it's grown and grown and grown. Um, but I think the way that we look at things is such a positive. We try and sort of do things in a positive way. We try not to sort of like pat people on the head and sort of go, you need to look after yourself. We try and empower people. So we call it the truth question. How are you out of 10? So if you can see behind me, these are some of the posters that we sort of do. But the idea is literally trying to sort of empower men mainly. You know, we're mainly we're a men's mental health mental fitness movement, but a mental health charity. But we're for everyone. I mean, like a mentally fit man's good for everyone. So I think that's sort of like what our mission is, to try and create a mentally fit society and try and end suicide through that. But it all comes down to this: how are you out of 10? So all talk clubs begin and end that way. We've got talk and exercise, which is close rugby, football, running, paddle, skating, and then we've got the talking groups, which is sort of like normally sort of 8 to 10 men sit in a circle in the back of a pub, go through 4 rounds of how you out of 10, gratitude, uh, how you can look after your mental fitness this week, and then how you out of 10 at the end. And then we've got now, and then last summer we introduced talk club therapy. So we've got sort of like people who are, if you're regularly checking in below a 5, so that's just our marker. But if we sort of like, if you're regularly checking in below a 5 and you need some extra help, you need some extra support, then we can offer you group therapy, and then we're hopefully launching one-on-one therapy soon. So the idea is this complete continuity of care. So you've sort of like, you've got, if you are, you can come and run with us or come play football with us, or if I call it, if you get injured, you've got your physio at your gym. If you're injured and you need sort of extra support, if you like, then you've got therapy inside our community. So that's where we are. I mean, we're trying to sort of like, the idea is that you are, once you're in TC, you don't need to leave. I mean, like, you're with us for life. It's not just come in and be fixed. It's sort of like you come in and you're supported and you're here with us. But I think that's the tone that sort of is setting and developing and helping us grow, because it's sort of like, it's this positive space. The same way, like I talk about when you see someone go for a run, you don't go, cool, they're unfit, right? You go, good on them for going for a run, right? But when you hear someone going, they're going, oh, I'm going to therapy. You go, why, what's wrong? You go, well, nothing, I'm going to therapy. It's sort of like, it's the way that we're still looking at things of when it comes to our mental health, and we look at ideas to look after ourselves, like Talk Club. We're trying to sort of go, look, it's before you get mentally ill, you can try and take control of these things, especially as men. Try and take control and try and help yourself the same way that we are told, and we've been told for 50 years, to look after our physical fitness. We're trying to sort of inspire people to look after their mental fitness by just simply like talking about what's going on for them. So
Yeah.
that's sort of like, that's TC in 8 minutes. So
Excellent. That was, no, it was brilliantly put. That was really good. I was going to ask you, there was a radio show on here a couple of days ago, and it was kind of a famous person who had lost his wife to suicide, and he was saying he 100% thinks it's categorically preventable. So do you think that? Do you think by doing what you're doing, it prevents it, or do you think there's some cases where you just can't prevent it?
I don't I don't think it's 100. I don't think it's 100%. I don't think anything's 100%. I think that there is. Do I think Steve was preventable? Yes. Do I think Steve was preventable? Yes. But I can't sort of say for everyone. And
Mhm.
I think it's sort of, I think it's hard to make a sweeping statement like that. Um, I think that because you can't go, you can't control people's state of mind from, I mean, schizophrenia or links to autism or all these other things that kick in. You go, well, eventually, it's like cancer. Eventually, cancer should be 100% preventable. Eventually, because we understand, because we need to understand where what the biology and the physiology is coming in to sort of like to create create that problem with ourselves. But I don't believe like that's almost like saying murder's preventable. Like, because you sort of go, people have had hideous upbringings and been under trauma from birth. Are they more likely to suffer from mental ill health? Well, probably. So but I do believe that a lot of it is preventable. It's the same as sort of saying, "Are heart attacks preventable?" Well, yes, in theory, right? Like if we look after ourselves better, I mean, it's still the biggest killer of heart disease is still the biggest killer in the UK, right? So you sort of go, but if we eat healthily, if we sort of like if we exercise, if we exercise and we eat healthily, is our heart attacks preventable? So you sort of go like, so I think that is heart disease preventable. So I sort of do think there's a certain amount in there. I think that you could probably do a lot. I think you could do a lot of help. Could we smash these numbers? Could we bring them down? 1,000%, right? I think that what we're doing is we're still a little bit sleepwalking into mental ill health, and we're still and a lot of it is about understanding our own empowerment and our own journey inside that, um, because even with sort of like as we talked about earlier, but I don't know what you'll include or not, but like even with neurodiversity, you're sort of going, we don't know yet. We don't know what the connections with with suicide rates and autism and neurodiversity is. So people are claiming that there's sort of like there is a connection there, but we're still trying to work out what neurodiversity is. You sort of like, I
Yeah.
mean, like even autism wasn't sort of diagnosed properly in women until and like it's until recently. It's sort of like it was
Yeah.
still on the scale of men. So sort of like on boys in the 50s, my wife was telling me. So you sort of going like we are so far behind when it comes to understanding what is going on with our minds and with mental ill health. Um, my question would be more about can gyms prevent heart disease? And you go, well, a lot of them could. Can gyms prevent obesity? Well, a lot of them could, right? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to sort of like be the I don't like mind gyms because it sounds like you're doing Sudoku the whole time, um but the idea is a lot about that that sort of like almost like that responsibility that we can that not responsibility is a weird word like that we can take action. Mental health is not something that happens to us, right? So mental ill health can happen to us, yes, but mental health is something that we can control, like we can control our physical health. If you eat kebabs every day and you don't sort of like you don't go do any exercise, you will put on weight, right? This is not complicated. The same as our brains. If we don't look after our brains, we don't give ourselves decent sleep, we don't look after, we don't we don't eat properly, we don't exercise properly, we don't we this thing will not look after itself. It needs to be looked after. It needs to be given some respect. Our brains need to be given respect, and our minds need to be given respect, which I don't believe society allows us to do. I believe that. I
Yeah.
believe that because of society or the way that the speed that we move at, we are not giving ourselves the best chance for healthy minds, and we're not giving ourselves the best chance um, for a mentally fit society. So,
Mhm.
and that's what I'm hearing. That's what I hear in our groups. Like we got oh, I don't know, roughly about 4,000 men in our community, sort of 4,500, 5,000 men in our community, somewhere between those numbers. But you sort of go, but that's what I hear regularly is this thing of what can I do to look after myself? Um, and I think the idea of mental fitness means that this is the reason why language is really important to me because I go mental fit, but people sort of say mental health and people think mental ill health. You Google mental health, and you'll see words like depression, anxiety. You'll see the negatives. If you Google physical health, you'll see the positives. You won't see cancer, right?
Mhm.
You'll see the positives. You'll see people doing exercise, or you'll see yoga, or running, or football. And those are algorithms that as a society we've created those. And so people think mental ill health when you say mental health. So that's the reason why language like mental fitness is really, really important to me, because that means, because if you're mentally fit, you can be mentally strong. Fitness can go up and down. It suddenly becomes a state more than a diagnosis. So and that's what we're trying to sort of like, we hammer home about that, because to me, especially when it comes to blokes, is that if I'm mentally fit, I can be mentally strong, which means that so I talk about my problems and I can get mentally fit. Yeah, along with other things. Yeah. Oh, so talking's good then? Yeah, talking's good. Oh, okay. I thought it was weak to speak. No, talking's good. If you've got some stuff that's going on in your head and you get it out, then it's better for you. Okay, that sounds quite cool. So that's the attitude that we take, and that's sort of like, I mean, look, as I say, we're only tiny. There's only six of us, but we're punching quite high, and we're we're collecting lots of people to sort of like join us on this journey. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. That sounds amazing. I think one thing as well I did want to ask you about, I mean, I get like I think there's a big difference, isn't there? You've got to like there's like different kinds of mental illness because there's obviously some that require medication and like psychiatrists and that are really quite severe, but then you've got people that are just kind of slipping down this slope of like, you know, their life's not going the way they wanted, or that's different. But then you've got like situational, I'm quite interested in that situational depression, or like if you're stuck in a situation, say you're in an abusive relationship as a man, or you're in like the benefit system. To me, that feels like it's set up to make people kill themselves sometimes because like I was reading statistics because obviously I've been trying to like research this for Karen's story as well, and like 300 people a year are killing themselves as a direct result of universal credit because that benefit is so difficult to navigate. And I mean, what do we do about that? Is that as simple as kind of just talking about it, or is that like a systemic thing going on as well, that like a lot of systems, like you said, are there to kind of they don't support people's mental health at all?
Yeah. So money's a major issue that I hear all the time. As I say, I'm not a therapist, so I don't know these things, but um and I'm not a commentator on society, or if you like, a politician. I had this big debate yesterday about politics. Do we get involved? I know I created a grassroots charity to try and help take the pressure off the NHS more than start fights with the government. Um, Unfortunately, it's money. Money's always sort of like where we sit with everything. NHS is underfunded. People who need medication and are suffering from different levels of mental ill health, um, schizophrenia, etc. You're not going to get, you're not talking about answering how you are out of 10 is not going to sort out your schizophrenia, right? So uh, and universal credit is those are horrible statistics. And I think that what you've got as well when it comes to money, there's major. I mean, we're in a still in the cost of living crisis. We're still sort of coming out of the pandemic. We're still trying to work out what we're meant to be doing after Brexit. The country financially is in a bit of a confused state. Um, so and once you're in that spiral down, it's really hard to sort of grab hold of a rope and pull yourself up. Um, but I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people ahead of the curve to try and sort of look after themselves before they get into that spiral. Because what happens is when you start getting into that spiral, it's really hard to pull yourself up. But also going, like when things start kicking in, like you lose your job, or 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 you need extra help with this, or your relationship is struggling, or things are going on, etc. If you are stronger, you will be able to handle those things better. So, for example, one of my staff is going through a lot of stuff at home. He's come from a community, and he said to me the other day, I wouldn't be if this had happened to me 2 years ago, I wouldn't be surviving the way I'm surviving now. because he's now worked really, really hard on getting mentally strong, so that when the crap does hit the fan, then he can handle it better. Unfortunately, we will always have crap that hit us. Always, all of us have, and all of us will have. Um, I think that the quite a lot of society, we still exist in a blame culture. Um, whether it's victim blaming down to blaming the government, blaming this, blaming that. I think what I've learned throughout my own journey is that I've just got to try and work out how to navigate my story and how to go navigate me, and ask for help if I can, but also go in and then try and get help when I can. So so yeah, so the universal credit thing is a really horrible. I mean, the same thing that we've got with those horrible stories that happen with Ofsted and the teachers. I mean, you see these teachers and they're under so much pressure. My wife's, as I say, my wife's a teacher, and they're under so much pressure. We need these teachers. We need them to be mentally fit. Society's not there yet for them. Have Ofsted changed Ofsted have meant to have changed the way that they attack things to try and be more supportive, but it's still a test. So there's lots of these things that will take decades to unravel, unfortunately. But the more that we talk about them now, the more conversations that we have, the more times we raise these things, the more people who are moving in the right direction, the quicker we'll get there. I mean, you look at where we were 10 years ago with sexism or in the workplace or equal pay. You look at 20 years ago, 30 years ago with racism. We're not there yet. We're not there with sexism. We're not there with misogyny. We're not there with racism, but we're better than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So I still think there's a lot of fighting to do. Um, but I think it's still a massive journey. I mean, like even with mental health, you mean like five years ago, we were it was still 10 years ago, it was still a taboo subject. I believe that the fact that we're chatting, but the more and more people are talking about that. My worry is that I've had enough of awareness, like from when I started this thing, when we started this thing as a collective, we'd had enough of awareness. I think we're all pretty aware now, especially now. We want some action, and how are you out of 10? It empowers you to look after yourself, to be honest with yourself, to start conversations with people. Like people go, oh, go and talk to your mate about how you're feeling. It's like, well, I've never spoken this foreign language called feelings before. You might as well say go and speak Latin. I've never done that either. So um how are you out of 10? I'm a 5. Why are you a 5? Because of this going on, that going on, that going on. Now I've got a conversation started. So especially with blokes, numbers help because they let me allow me to pitch somewhere where I am. Why are you not a 6? Why are you not an 8? Okay, I'm this number because of this. It's a way of unfolding things. So I think things like there's fantastic charities, fantastic organizations, movements doing great work when it comes to mental health, but we're still not there yet, way off it yet.
Yeah, I think it was interesting what you said at the very beginning about us all moving too fast and the way society's set up, and you need like 2 jobs just to exist and stuff, and that gives no time for community. And I think the brilliant thing about what you're doing is you've built a community, and like sometimes that's just enough, just knowing you've got people there, even if you can't talk very well, even if you can't express yourself, knowing that you've got somewhere to go. You know, if you're feeling that bad, you can go play football or something. I think that's an amazing thing that you do here.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, what we found is that society, especially when it comes to men, Rory O'Connor, who's the sort of like the one of the leaders in suicidal, I don't want to say thinking, but sort of like where we are as a society, and he's academic, one of the suicide academics. He sort of talks about how you need multiple ways of getting multiple ways of looking after each other before you sort of like before you get into that blue zone, and offloading, talking about how we're feeling is one thing, but also a sense of belonging is a really, really important thing. And that's what I've been really sort of honoured to be part of with Talk Club, by the fact of people come up to me going, "Have you got a club here?" And I go, "I have no idea. I have no idea if I've got a club there." Go on the website, and that's an amazing feeling. It's that moment in Fight Club where he goes, "Oh, I go Tuesdays and Thursdays. I go Wednesdays. There's one on Tuesday and Thursday," and it's sort of, to me, it's brilliant, because it's sort of, this community is growing at a rate of knots, and lots of men are belonging in a positive, really, really positive environment, are finding levels to belong, and you don't need to sit down and sit in a circle and talk about your feelings, pouring it out. You can just come play football with us. All you got to do is say a number at the end and say a number at the end, beginning, and it's like, what are you doing? But what's been brilliant about it is I've seen it become a feeder. I've seen men come to a run club and need a bit more, and then they come to our talking groups and need a bit more, and then they go to our therapy groups, and you go, like, from coming running with us, they're now in therapy, and you go, and this consistency in how you are 10, the consistency with a logo that sort of, that Liam Gallagher is happy to wear and promote, that Tyson Fury is happy to wear and promote, that sort of, that we've got on a beer, that we've got in a coffee. You sort of like the way that we attack ourselves we present ourselves as a charity is that, like, I'm not going to go as far as we're cool, but we're slightly, you don't see other charities, people don't wear other charities as a brand. We are trying to move into that space where you go, I'm proud to be part of this community. I'm proud to sort of like wear my cap or my logo on it. I mean, my for my advertising days is give them a sense of belonging. Sort of like, give them a badge to wear, literally a badge to wear. And that's what we've learned from Nike over the years, from Apple over the years. You wear these things, it says something about you. If I want you wear Gold's Gym because you sort of like, whether you go to Gold's Gym or you want to sort of say, I look after myself. But that's what we're trying to create, this sort of like this sort of ecosystem where men can actually become this community of men, where they can actually, look, I can look after myself, but also I can promote them by buying an alcohol-free beer and look after other men through that. So that's what stuff like that is really important to us, as the way that we present ourselves, but also the way that we move forward.
That's brilliant. That's really cool. Is there like anything else you wanted to say, or have we covered pretty much everything?
No, we haven't got many clubs in Scotland. We've only got one in Elgin for some reason.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's pretty north, isn't it?
pretty north. Sort of like, that's what I said to John, and John goes, "Wow." So if anyone wants to join us and set up a club in up north, if you go to talkclub.org, you'll see where our clubs are. We've got clubs almost every night of the week online as well. So there's no excuse to not join us. As I say, talk and listen group lasts about 2 hours, 4 rounds. A sit down one will have about 8 to 10 men in there, run by a captain who's sort of who's been trained by us to sort of like to facilitate the group, but they are just one of us. They're sort of like, they're just a normal bloke. They're not a therapist. The therapist lot come later. But if you want to join or be a captain or set up a club, please go to talkclub.org.
Excellent. Thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Pleasure.